All right. We are live with Rachael Real of Rachael Real Estate in Chicago. Hi, Rachael.
Good morning, Jen. Morning, Saul.
And Saul Klein on this Better Call Saul episode. Hi, Saul.
Good morning. How you guys doing? Or maybe afternoon. I don't know.
I don't know. We're spread across
different part of the day everywhere.
Yeah. Well, in a couple of weeks, I'll be in Portugal, so that'll be pretty far away too. We'll be all across all kinds of time zones. So, Rachael, this episode of Better Call Saul is how commissions are like sex.
Yes, in such a way that, let's put it in perspective a little bit. We don't talk about commissions as much as teenagers and parents don't talk about sex. So why are we not talking about it? We have to talk about it
because people think it's illegal, right? Saul, is it illegal to talk about commissions?
No, it's not illegal, but people think that it is.
Why?
And they think that it is because over the years we've been almost overly brainwashed by our attorneys in the industry because of the complications that can arise from incorrectly talking about commissions or being accused of talking about things that could lead to a complaint of an antitrust violation. And so to avoid ever being accused, the simple solution a number of years ago was to teach all of us realtors, don't talk about it.
But
don't
that
talk
actually
about it.
is,
fact, if you hear people talking, this is how we were instructed to do. If you hear people talking about it, you should tell them not to, and get up and walk out of the room. This is what you were taught.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, and they do that on the Facebook pages. They're like, we can't talk about it, but it kind of like seems, yeah, it's like Rachael, it's like your example with teenagers and talking to their parents about sex. It's like, just because we're not talking about it doesn't
mean it's not happening.
Right, doesn't mean it's not happening. And could it potentially be happening more because you're not talking about it? And what the happening for commission is, I mean, the whole rule was to prevent price fixing, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, yeah, actually there was cases, right, antitrust cases that have to do with the Sherman Antitrust Act and California, the Cartwright Act, and commissions and illegal. See, it actually went back to one of the first cases I know was a case in Maryland.
Okay.
And I can't remember the year, and we should go look it up, Rachel. It'll be kind of fun. But as I recall, a couple of the brokers went to jail.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. So, so this is like Gray Bar Motel. It's like people were worried about going to jail if they talked about it. Now, it's not against the law to talk about commissions, as you mentioned, Jennifer. It might even be, from the way I look at it, it's almost like everybody telling everybody not to talk about it. That's collusion to keep commissions where they are.
Right.
Instead of self-defense, let's not talk about it so we can't get accused.
Right.
But what they don't realize is not talking about it, you could be accused, because now the DOJ is looking at this and they'll say that historically commissions have been 5 or 6%, and you've got all these changes, all these technological changes, sellers and buyers doing more things on their own, and yet commissions are still 5 and 6%. So it must mean there's collusion in the industry and that we're price fixing. Now, the fact that we're not, but it doesn't look good when somebody brings up commissions and somebody says, let's not talk about it.
Right.
So here's the fear. The fear is that if we're competitors in the same market, even if we don't overtly talk about it, we might be passing signals back and forth.
Like hand signals? Do we have a special realtor?
Yeah, we have like different rules, right? So
like,
even though we might not say it, we could be accused of, and because the evidence is, well, commission stayed the same.
Yeah.
So we don't know what you guys were talking about, but you know what? Commissions have stayed the same.
Yeah.
And so now we're coming after you. So the remedy for brokers who hire people, and we talked about this, you hire them as independent contractors, you have no control over what they say, what they do, whether they go to classes, how much.
So don't come at me with hiring employees again.
Yeah. So here's the broker hires somebody as an independent contractor, and now people can start talking about stuff that they don't even know, because, and you can see these conversations in social media where people will say, what about commission? And somebody will say, I'm not cutting my commission. And somebody else will say, you're worth your commission. And it's like, worth what? People must have some in their mind. There's some amount that you shouldn't charge less than.
Right.
That's price fixing. And people are, if I was the DOJ, I'd be following all these online. I'd be calling up all these people and asking them, why do you think you shouldn't be talking about this?
Right.
Because as long as we're not competitors, like us three talking about it. I don't sell real estate. I'm licensed, but I don't sell it anymore. You're in Illinois, you're in Ohio. Like, we could probably talk about commissions all day long and we'd never hear a word of it because we're not really competitors.
Right.
And
so you're saying it's different if we talk about if we were all in the same area,
all in the same room and in the same geographic location where you're sharing business.
Yeah, there'd be a better chance of somebody being successful in a complaint against you if all of you went to the same meetings every week together.
Right.
So let's get this straight. There's nothing wrong with talking about commissions. As a matter of fact, what we should be talking about is that we should be talking about commissions, what we charge, why we charge it, why we're worth so much, or why
what's
we're
the value that you bring, less,
whatever it might be. Those are the conversations that should be had instead of being cut off. Well, that's something we can't talk about. And people used to use this. As a consumer would say, well, I'd like a commission break. And they say, oh, that's against policy. That's against public policy. It's illegal for us to charge. Right? I've heard realtors say this, right? It's illegal for us to charge less than that amount. Well, that's a problem. When you start talking like that, right?
Oh my God.
It's a big difference between what the overall legality is or your office versus your office policy. It may be against your office policy to go below X, but it's certainly not illegal in any way, shape, or form.
So the rules were created for, and the rules make sense, right? It's like it doesn't, for the public's, protection. Thank you. I couldn't grab the word. It doesn't, you don't want a bunch of people in our industry like colluding and price fixing and saying and it never being able to change or being questioned. Like, that's a monopoly, right? So like, we as a country have decided that monopolies, we don't want that. We want the competition. We want and in order to have that, you have to have the conversation. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, think about this. Think about if I went to a Chamber of Commerce meeting in my town and there were 5 different brokerages there and all of us agents are sitting at different tables and we're having a conversation about this. That's no good for the general public, because the general public then thinks, well, you guys all sit at these chamber meetings once a month. You talk about what you're charging. And then now none of us, we all know that we are stuck paying this and there is no negotiating any of that. So that's why it's not good for the consumer for us to be in a situation like that where we can all sit there and price fix.
So what you have too is you have then people who are licensed to sell real estate are really ignorant about compensation policies.
Right.
And we know that. And so since we know we got people working for us who are incompetent when it comes to talking about commissions, it's not a rule, it's direction from counsel. Right? It's not there's no rule, so you can't talk about it. It's a direction from counsel.
Oh my God, if we took all the direction from counsel, we would never.
That's why we're where we are today on this.
Oh my God.
Right. So and there was a case where people went to jail because it was actual. It was like somebody came into the marketplace, they were going to charge less. These brokers got together and they all agreed that they were all going to charge a certain amount.
Well, I mean, that sounds like a violation.
Right. And then you add into that the potential for boycotting, where if another provider comes into the marketplace and says, I'm going to charge less, now all of these other brokerages get together and say, hey, we're not going to do business. We're not going to show listings from this particular brokerage because they don't play by the same rules we do.
Right.
And you mentioned group boycotts. That's another interesting one. And in violation of antitrust are things called group boycotts. Now, I'm not sure that any conversation I've ever been involved in could be classified as a group boycott, because I'm not sure if the conversation, but I've been in conversations where people say, we can't talk about that. We can't talk. Everybody says, you know what? I'm tired of this particular company. Let's just grab one out of the air. Zillow. I'm tired of Zillow. Let's all take our listings off of Zillow. None of us do business with Zillow. If you're paying your money to Zillow, you're a fool. You shouldn't pay your money to Zillow. Let's all agree we're going to take our business away from it. Well, if that is a conversation, and that could be looked at as a group boycott.
Right.
And so then that would be a violation.
Right.
And so, but you see that conversation, don't you, Rachel? Where you see people saying,
see it all the time. See it all the time.
Yeah. So antitrust is a big subject. It's got some mean penalties if you're ever found guilty.
It sure does.
And so you want to be careful. So we understand where this caution, and there should be caution. There should be caution. You should be careful. Well, it should be that in almost everything, right? So you should be cautious about how you speak about commissions, but don't use the fact that you think you can't talk about it as an excuse not to negotiate commissions with somebody.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think like when you're having the conversation, keeping the end in mind. So as real estate agents, our client is we have fiduciary responsibilities to that client. So is the conversation that we're having matching up with those fiduciary, right?
Fiduciary duties, right? Or are we breaching fiduciary duties?
Right. And so I think I think it's okay to talk about whatever you want in general, as long as like you are being mindful of who's benefiting from the conversation and who's not benefiting from the conversation. And just being like, okay, am I like leaning kind of one way or the other? Like, am I really hurting people here?
Yeah, and if you go back and you look at it historically, this is the rub, is the DOJ looks at this and they say, 20 years ago, commissions were 6%.
Yeah.
10 years ago, commissions were 6%.
Right.
3 years ago, commissions were 6%. Now you're going to tell me there's nobody's agreeing to keep commissions at a certain level? That's the argument.
Right. Exactly.
And if you were involved in conversations with it, then, right, and now we're at that point where the Department of Justice has the policy, has the funding, has the past history of things that they wanted to accomplish, but they didn't get to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to come back at the industry. They already are. And people need to understand that when the Department of Justice comes after you, it's not necessarily they're coming after you for new things.
Right.
They're coming after you for things that they didn't get exactly the way they wanted before.
Right.
Because in legal circles, you come to agreement oftentimes and you compromise, and compromise often doesn't give you exactly what you want.
No. And then those agreements wear out at some point, right? They're only in agreements for how many ever set of years, and then you can come back and re-agree.
And specifically, we did have that case with the DOJ where there was a settlement in 2008 as a 10-year agreement.
Yep.
10 years. Then in 2018 started the investigation process, and that was very orderly. There were two hearings followed by a complaint against NAR and others, right? So there's this ongoing regulation of the real estate industry.
Mm-hmm.
And we're being monitored and looked at all the time. Sometimes the environment is right for litigation for the Department of Justice, and sometimes it's not.
Right.
And when it's not, that doesn't mean it goes away.
Yeah.
Right. So these things, the question, how long do you think people have been moaning and groaning or liking dual agency? That's a 40-year argument from where I sit.
Right. It's never going away either.
Isn't right until they say no more dual agency.
Right.
So these arguments, these positions have been in the industry for years. Nothing's new, right? It's the same thing.
Well, it's just like the buyers and sellers, their objections are the same. Like they haven't come up with new objections. It's all the same.
It's all the same. So
it's so interesting to think about. It's interesting to think about. Well, what do you think, Saul? What's a final thought on this, and what should people be taking away from this video?
So first point is that it's okay to talk about commissions. It's not okay to collude.
Don't collude.
And it's not okay to even give the impression
of collusion.
And that's why people don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
They say, hey, the best way to avoid this altogether
is not talk about it.
Is just not talk about it.
But it doesn't make it go away, like everything.
Right. But it protects me. I'm never going to get accused.
Oh, okay.
Right? I mean, that's the thing. I'm not talking about it.
Right.
But that's the way we've been instructed. So know that you can. Know that there's great interest in commissions, that this is a giant expense that people pay during their lifetime is the commissions to buy and sell properties. And so it's a big thing. It's being looked at by the government. It's okay to talk. You should talk about it to at least to your clients.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So it's important.
Well, you look at these new listing agreements, new buyer agency agreements, and all of this discussion around this investigation by the Department of Justice. You look at all these documents and go, these documents just keep adding more and more verbiage and information about commissions that you're supposed to be having these discussions with your clients. And a lot of times buyers aren't having them. Specifically, buyer agents aren't having them with their clients. They're just saying, hey, my services are free, which you can't say they're free. They're not free. They're paid for by the transaction. If the transaction wasn't there, they wouldn't be getting paid. the best way I've come across as far as how to explain that to a client if you're working as a buyer's agent.
Mm-hmm.
But these agents have to be having more conversations with their clients about how this is broken down. In Illinois, you're supposed to take that listing agreement and explain, this is your commission, and this is how it's broken down from this list side, the buy side, everything. But most of the time, they're not having that conversation.
No.
And here's another thing you're starting to see, because we're all connected now, communications. I'm not saying successful communications, but communications has increased dramatically. Right.
Yes.
So we see a lot of different conversations. A lot of people are talking about now we've got, because of the nature of the real estate industry, we've got all these people that want to get into all the money that's made in the real estate transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got these outside forces looking at real estate saying, geez, there's billions of dollars every year we can go after, we can get a piece of that. And maybe the way we do it is we charge less than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so now what you're going to see, and you already are, you're seeing people come into the industry, or people who are into the industry coming up with new compensation models or charging less. We're starting to see that. And so don't, as a real estate professional, put off talking to a consumer about it, because they're going to hear about it.
Because they're hearing it.
Say, hey, I just said Redfin just said they do it for 1%. What about you? Oh, that's against the rules. No.
It goes back to the same birds and bees conversation.
Right.
If you want the people to have if you want your kids to have the right information, talk to them about it instead of them learning it on the backseat of the school bus.
Yeah, because you know that they're going to hear from consumers.
You know they're talking about it.
They're talking about it.
The consumers seeing all these discount ads, and then they come to you and they say, well,
what are you doing?
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't talk about it. Or right. No, you have to talk about it. You're going to be confronted, and you want to have the right answers. And we've talked about this before. The answer is by defining your value.
Yeah,
exactly. And educating the consumer. Education.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know. And so a lot more of these new models are going to come into the marketplace. And I think then one of the advantages a realtor, a good real estate professional has, is the ability to talk about these things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know they only do that, but what services do they provide?
Right. Yeah, you definitely have to know you have to know your value, and putting your head in the sand does not make it go away. I mean, if you don't know that by now in life.
Or hatred towards the people who are charging a different amount.
That's dumb.
Right.
Doesn't make sense. So
the whole point about competition is it what is it? Something about rising.
It protects the consumer.
Well, and it rises all tides or whatever. What's that weird expression?
Yeah. The high tide rises all boats.
Right. All the boats.
When the tide comes in, it'll rise all the boats. Right. So we'll all benefit if we do this right. So this is an area where no one ever talked about it. So it was pretty much sacrosanct.
Yeah.
And even when the Department of Justice would get involved, and because of the lobbying efforts and the money and the forces, and just it always, and they'll say, and they use this, it doesn't matter whether you're telling me that you didn't collude or price fix.
Right.
The commissions are still the same.
Right.
It's like, the commissions are negotiable. Right.
Nudge, wink, wink. That's so funny. This is great conversation. Saul, you got Rachel drinking wine already.
Perfect. No, this is just I don't drink coffee, so I drink Coke.
Oh, okay.
Equally as bad for me, but we'll pretend it's wine. I'm good with
wine. Is good for you, I heard.
It is.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
So it makes me feel like garbage.
If people want to get a hold of you, what is the best way?
Well, they can send me an email at saul@bettercallsaul.realtor, or they can go to this blog that we're trying to develop to give people information about all these things. And it's called thedataadvocate.com. And we're trying to address and bring information that'll help people understand and put it in their own context and utilize it to help people develop their businesses around all the changes that are taking place. Because we see it every day. We talked about this before. Liberty Mutual. I never heard of Liberty Mutual till a couple of years ago, and now every night I see them on television where they got this Lamu, the emu. Only pay for what you need.
Yeah.
Only pay for what you need. It's becoming the past. Everybody's only pay for what you need, and that's going to work its way into the real estate space.
Well, because a lot of what's been happening is realtors have become a commodity, and when you become a commodity, then that's why people can
Well, that goes back to this idea of why would you hire you?
Right, exactly.
People got to be able to answer the question. If you can't answer definitively that question
with passion,
then you'd be not be in the real estate business.
We actually I just did a video live on my personal page about knowing your value as an agent. Yeah, because it is. That's what it is. I like it.
And that's the question.
On Facebook, it's Real Town, Real Talk.
Right? Real Town, we can join our community, Real Talk, and it's a different kind of real community because we've got a lot of people who have been around the industry for a long time. So it's not a group where we talk about the best closing gift, or it isn't that kind of group. It's a group where we'll have conversations between attorneys and CPAs and brokers and people that want to know. And we don't put up with any of this conversation that's not backed up by authority, right?
Right.
Because we don't want to spread the wrong word, and we don't want to give people the power to spread things that are just not true. Yeah. So we manage the group in a little bit different way, but most of the people there have been around it a long time. If you're new, they'll treat you right. There's nobody going to jump on you and call you an idiot for what you might say, but it is different, right? We try to control the conversation on the very important things. We're not going to teach you how to sell real estate better, although you might get ideas.
Right. But I think that's what a lot of agents are missing right now too.
Absolutely.
They're focusing on things like what's the best closing gift, what's the best this, that, what kind of car should I drive? That's not the important stuff. The important stuff is what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And Rachel, if people have a referral for you in Chicago or they want to get a hold of you, what is the best way?
Best way to reach me is by cell phone at 630-542-8688 or on Facebook at Rachael Real Estate.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys being on for this Better Call Saul episode, and have a good rest of the day.
Hey, good
you too. Thanks, guys.